The Saga of Five Ages, an epic tale spanning thousands of years, as told by those that have lived through them all. The 12 Rings of the Emperor. What is the meaning behind this enigmatic phrase? Is it a riddle to be solved, or is there treasure to be found? This is the tale of the Magistrate in the year 693. Utopia and Anarchy. At 71 years of age, Quintus Megellus Belarico had lived to see them both. He had seen his beloved Diathalos rise to become a sprawling empire that was the pinnacle of civilized society in the entire world of Dragonus. He had also seen it plunged into the chaos and anarchy that now ravaged the land. The splendor that was Diathalos fell prey to the scourges of decadence and decay. And though its history had spanned a mere 186 years, it went before its time. Diathalos had so much to offer the world, if only those who had served it hadn't been so greedy, selfish, and corrupt. Quintus had been one of those servants, though he liked to think he had led a much more honest life in his service to the empire. His position as chief magistrate demanded that he be righteous and lawful at all times. But alas, some of those times saw him embroiled in the aristocratic bureaucracy that was the royal grandeur of Diathalos. It was then that he'd had to compromise and pass judgments that he was less than proud of. But no matter. Those days were over. Now survival was all that remained. After the fall, many of his countrymen had fled to the north, settling in either Gailanth or Oromandia. The more foolish had stayed, in a vain attempt to carve out some sort of meager existence in the raised nation. Quintus had been one of those fools. He had far too much pride to go easily or quickly. For most of his adulthood, Quintus had wealth, power, and influence, and at this stage in his life, in this setting, those memories and trappings were worth holding on to. They were all he had left. They were everything. Well, almost everything. The boy on his left, helping Quintus walk, was Neolith Ori, though he could hardly be considered a boy any longer. Neolith had come all the way from Tarkesra, far to the east, at the age of 16, just to serve as a clerk in Judge Belarico's court. His exuberance, honesty, and faith in Amatar, the god of justice, reminded Quintus of himself as a youth. Neolith worked hard and never complained, an admirable trait he had retained to this day. Quintus had never given the boy much thought or attention, but on one occasion, shortly after his arrival at court, did inspire Neolith to pursue his aspirations of becoming a magistrate. That was 6 years ago. And so, after only 2 years of exemplary service, the empire collapsed, and Neolith, like many others, had nowhere to go. Attempting a trip back home had been, and was still, too dangerous. He had, of course, sent word to his family, but, not surprisingly, even after 4 years, he had heard nothing. His optimism, of course, told him that the letter simply hadn't reached Tarkesra, but Quintus, as gently as possible, had tried to impress upon Neolith the fact that his parents and siblings were probably missing or dead. Nonetheless, Neolith had stayed on with his judge and mentor, offering his services as personal assistant. Considering the fact that the rest of his staff had fled, Quintus had little choice but to accept the boy's offer. Since then, he had come to rely on Neolith greatly, for emotional as well as physical support. Quintus still held his magistrate's staff in his right hand, leaning on it ever more heavily in these last few trying years. This was his badge of office, and a testament to the prominence of his station. Made of a smooth, dark mahogany, its bottom was capped by a mallet head of brass, which produced a thundering crack when pounded against the marble floors of the courts of Diathalos. At the top, a downward-pointing silver sword with stylized scales of justice as a pommel and crosspiece formed the head. This symbol of Amatar added another 12 inches to its already impressive 7-foot height, and was resplendent in any setting. Both the staff and its bearer commanded respect wherever they went, though now both were a little worse for wear. Quintus noticed how worn its finish had become, as well as the nicks and scratches that now covered its once polished surface. The symbolism was not lost on the magistrate, as he used the staff to poke through a pile of marble fragments, once a statue of some imperial dignitary. As a judge, he would regularly sift through the facts of his cases, searching for the truth. Now he sifted through the rubble of his homeland, searching for any remnants of his glorious past that could be salvaged. But he was also searching for something else. "Come, Magistrate," ordered Dorian. "We must be well away from here before dusk." "At once, Captain Patronus," Quintus acquiesced. He trusted the former legionnaire implicitly, as he had found that the soldier had the same sense of duty Quintus felt in himself. If Dorian Patronus said it was time to move on, then one should make haste immediately. "Attend me, boy." Neolith offered his young, strong arm to help Quintus up from his kneeling position, taking no offense at the nickname the old judge had used, if only out of habit. He knew that his mentor had every respect for him, and in fact, thought of Neolith as a son. Neolith didn't mind filling that role, believing that his presence was a gift to the venerable judge in his twilight years, allowing him to satisfy an unfulfilled ambition in the man's life that had been preempted by his honorable service to the Empire. The magistrate had no children of his own, having dedicated his life at a very young age to the pursuit of law and justice. Neolith led Quintus to his horse, which was being quietly groomed and attended by the lovely Spiretta. Neolith, and for that matter the rest of the party, knew little about her, save that she had been a horsemaster in the southern city of Zintara. Her beauty belied her age, though the consensus held that she was about 10 years older than Neolith. Her strong, silent demeanor, combined with raven hair and a healthy physique, was enough to make even Captain Patronus shy when she was near. But it was her affinity with animals and knowledge of the wilderness that made her invaluable to the small, ragged band. Spiretta held the black steed steady as Neolith helped Quintus into the saddle. "Thank you both," offered Quintus with a tired huff. "Gladly, Magistrate," replied Spiretta, graciously and with a slight bow of the head. Quintus was secretly convinced that Spiretta was indeed some sort of aristocrat or noble attempting to hide her true identity. Her discipline and mannerisms were too well refined. It wouldn't be the first he had seen. There were all sorts of vagabonds wandering the ruins, looking for someone to blame for the catastrophe. Most held the nobility and officials of Diathalos responsible, and those same misplaced masses were looking to commit rape and robbery to satisfy their lust for revenge. So if their comely companion was truly someone of import, it was not the judge's place to reveal her. Dorian and Spiretta mounted up, their two horses leading the party, with Quintus and Neolith following behind. They had only gone a few feet when Quintus spoke. "I believe it is time that we headed south," Quintus declared. Both Dorian and Spiretta wheeled their mounts to face Quintus. "Honorable Magistrate," Dorian addressed the judge, "we have discussed this matter before. Zintara has been overrun, and we will not be able to breach its interior. Every rumor we have heard, reliable or otherwise, supports this fact." "Precisely why we must go, Captain," replied Quintus. "It is time that we settle this issue once and for all, and discover officially what has befallen our fair city in the hills." Dorian lowered his head in a troubled manner. Quintus knew that the soldier wanted to argue the point of proceeding into this highly dangerous area, but had too much respect for the old man to contradict him. Spiretta, who claimed to hail from Zintara, was oddly quiet on the matter. Her eyes, however, reflected her uneasiness at the thought of returning to her hometown. "Do you have anything to add, Spiretta?" queried Quintus. The gorgeous and rugged brunette paused for a moment, trying to think of something constructive to say. "We should avoid the roads. Stick to the forest until we reach the hills on the outskirts of the city." Quintus nodded his agreement. "If we keep a cautious pace, that should put a 5 or 6 day ride ahead of us. I should think that between the four of us, we should be able to conceive a plan of infiltration by then." Dorian looked up from his thoughts to find the magistrate staring at him, waiting for a response. "Your Honor," Captain Patronus complied. Quintus turned to Neolith, looking at him compassionately. "Once we reach Zintara, son, you needn't follow us in. The danger may be—" "I am with you, sir," Neolith broke in. Quintus put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "I just want you to realize that regardless of what you have seen, regardless of all the things that have happened here, you still have your entire life ahead of you." "And it is your path I follow, sir," Neolith said proudly. Quintus was nearly moved to tears as the party headed south through the forest.